The wind slammed against the wooden cottages, rattling shutters and shaking the glass panes. Snow buried the roads under white silence, and in every home children clung to dreams of gifts and sweets. But the shadow that lingered at one door was not Santa's shadow. It had horns. High in the Austrian Alps, the night of December 5th was one of biting frost and endless snow. In a secluded village where every house was built of dark timber and stone, the people lived in fear of old legends. They lit their candles carefully, whispering prayers to ward off what might crawl through the blizzards. For while most of the world awaited St. Nicholas with hope, this village remembered his darker companion, Krampus, the punisher of children, the beast that walked with chains and carried wicker baskets for those he took away. An old bell tolled from the chapel tower, muffled by snow. Inside one of the homes, a mother stoked the fire, whispering warnings to her little boy Elias, who had spent the year misbehaving and disobedient. She had told him stories of Krampus before, but tonight she spoke them with dread, because December 5th was Krampusnacht, the night the beast walked. And in the village tavern, an elderly man with eyes like cloudy glass leaned over a mug of steaming wine. He was the one everyone called Der Alte, the Old One. His voice cracked as he warned the gathered parents. "Do not forget to hang your wreaths and light your lanterns. Do not let your children stay awake after midnight. For Krampus comes with the storm, and the storm is here." Snow hissed against the door as if agreeing with him. A few villagers laughed it off, pretending not to believe, but none of them dared walk home alone that night. If you are a fan of horror, legends, and chilling folklore from around the world, make sure to subscribe to our channel, join our dark family, and never miss the nightmares that follow. The storm grew worse as midnight approached. Elias's little cottage trembled with every gust, its wooden beams groaning. His mother tucked him into bed, whispering, "Sleep, Elias. Do not listen to the wind. Do not look at the door." But Elias was curious. He always had been. And as the candles flickered and shadows crawled across the walls, he thought he heard something outside, a low scraping, like metal dragging over stone. At first he told himself it was only the branches scratching against the window. But then came the sound again, closer, heavier, chains. The boy's heart raced. He clutched the blanket under his chin, staring at the door. His mother had gone to her own room, leaving only the fading glow of an oil lamp. The wind howled, the shutters clattered. Then, beneath it all, came something else. A laugh. Deep, guttural, half beast, half man. The boy's breath caught in his throat. His eyes darted to the window. Outside, barely visible through the frost, was a dark figure moving between the snow-laden trees. Two horns rose above his head, curling like those of a goat. Its body was massive, draped in black fur, with long arms ending in claws that gleamed when the lightning struck. The boy's blood turned to ice. He knew the stories. He knew the warning. But what froze him most was the basket on the creature's back and the sound of faint whimpers coming from inside it. The storm swallowed the night, but beneath the roar of the wind came something worse. The dragging of chains, the stomp of hooves, and a growl that froze the very soul. The village slept uneasily beneath the crushing snowstorm. Candles flickered inside shuttered windows, their flames trembling like frightened hearts. Though parents had told their children to sleep, few managed to. The legend of Krampus gnawed at their thoughts, and the howling wind seemed to carry the beast's name with every gust. Inside his small room, Elias clutched his blanket so tightly his knuckles turned white. His breath puffed clouds of steam in the frigid air as he stared at the frosted glass. The figure was still there, taller than any man, with horns that curved upward and a shadow that stretched across the snow like a monstrous spider. Chains clattered as the beast moved closer to the cottage. Elias thought of his mother's words, "Do not listen to the wind, do not look at the door." But how could he not? Curiosity was stronger than fear, and fear itself was a kind of chain, dragging him toward the window. Then came the knock. It wasn't gentle. The wood groaned beneath the heavy thud, rattling every beam of the house. One knock, then another, then silence. Elias bit his lip until it bled, trying not to cry out. In another house across the village, Der Alte, the old man from the tavern, sat awake by the fire. His wrinkled hands shook as he poured another cup of steaming wine. He had seen this night before, many decades ago, when he was only a boy himself. He whispered into the flames, "He comes for the wicked, for the disobedient, for the liars and thieves. Saint Nicholas rewards, but Krampus takes. He took my brother once. No one believed me, but I saw the basket. I heard the screaming." His voice trembled. Outside his window the snow swirled like white ash, and in the distance he thought he heard the faint clang of iron chains. His stomach twisted, for he knew the storm was not just weather. It was a shroud, a cover for the beast that thrived within it. Elias's room, the knocking stopped. For a moment silence ruled, so complete it was almost deafening. He dared to hope the creature had gone. Slowly he slipped out of bed, his bare feet touching the icy wooden floor. He tiptoed to the window, each step a war between dread and curiosity. When he wiped the frost from the glass, the night revealed its horror. Krampus was no longer outside the gate, he was standing directly beneath the window. Elias gasped and stumbled backward. The creature's glowing eyes, yellow and hateful, snapped up to meet his. Its mouth stretched into a grin lined with jagged teeth, and a steaming breath clouded the glass. The boy's scream lodged in his throat. He could not move. He could not speak. Then came the sound. Clink, clink, clink. The chains dragged across the frozen ground as Krampus reached for the cottage door. Elias's mother awoke with a start. At first she thought the storm had disturbed her, but then she heard it, the unmistakable thudding on the door, heavy and deliberate. She grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace, heart racing, and ran to her son's room. She found Elias trembling on the floor, staring wide-eyed at the window. She pulled him into her arms, whispering frantically, "Don't look. Don't listen. Stay with me, Elias. Please stay with me." The knocking turned into pounding. Wood splintered as claws scraped the door. The sound of laughter, low, guttural, and monstrous, rolled through the cottage. The mother backed away, dragging Elias with her toward the fire. She prayed, muttering old words passed down from her grandmother, prayers meant to ward off evil. But with each word she spoke, the laughter only grew louder, mocking as though the beast knew no prayer could stop it. In other homes, parents awoke to the sounds of chains and scratching claws. Dogs whined and hid beneath beds. Somewhere down the snowy lane, a lantern fell and shattered, spilling light across the snow. Villagers peeked through shutters and swore they saw horns moving between the trees. The old man, der Alte, knew what was coming. He grabbed his coat, wrapped himself in scarves, and staggered into the storm. If Krampus had returned for the children, someone had to warn the others. He rang the old chapel bell with desperate hands, the clang echoing through the night. The villagers emerged with fear etched into their faces. They whispered, "It's him. It's Krampusnacht. He's here." The first taking. Suddenly a scream pierced the storm. It came from the far end of the village, a boy named Lucas, notorious for his mischief. His parents had always laughed off the legend, saying Krampus was just a tale. Now their laughter turned to horror. For when they rushed into his room, his bed was empty, the window smashed open. In the snow outside were hoof prints, massive, deep, and leading into the woods. The villagers stood frozen, staring at the prints that trailed into darkness. No human could have left them. They were cloven, like a goat's, but larger, and mixed with them were the small, dragging footprints of a child. Back in Elias's cottage, Elias huddled by the fire. The knocking on the door had stopped, replaced by something far worse. From outside came the faint cries of children, muffled, distant, and trapped. Elias's blood ran cold. He remembered the basket. He remembered the faces pressed against the wooden slats in his nightmare. He covered his ears, but he could still hear them. "Help us! Help us!" The chains rattled again, closer, louder, as if the beast was dragging its prisoners across the snow. The mother held Elias tight, whispering, "Don't listen, don't answer, don't open the door." But Elias, trembling, whispered back, "Mama, what if he comes for me?" The storm raged harder, swallowing the cries and chains into its roar. The villagers gathered at the chapel, clutching rosaries, candles, and each other. The old man raised his voice over the blizzard. "We cannot hide. He has come for the children, and if we do nothing, he will take them all." As the words left his mouth, the chapel door shuddered violently. Once, twice, then again. The candles blew out, plunging them into darkness. And in the silence, a voice growled from the other side, "Naughty." The chapel was meant to be a place of safety, but as the storm beat against its wooden walls, the people inside realized the devil was already at the door. The village chapel groaned under the weight of the storm. Its tall spire pierced through the blizzard, but even the cross at its peak seemed to tremble against the wind. Inside, nearly every villager had gathered, mothers clutching children, fathers holding lanterns and crude weapons, the elderly muttering prayers as though each word might keep the beast at bay. The air stank of melted wax and fear. Candles flickered weakly, casting long shadows over the stone altar. And then came the sound that silenced every whisper, every prayer. Boom! The chapel door shook violently, as if struck by something immense. Snow fell from the rafters, and several villagers screamed. Boom! The iron hinges groaned, and splinters of wood cracked free. Then came the voice, low, guttural. It slithered through the gaps in the door and into every ear. Naughty. Elias clung to his mother's skirts, shaking so hard he could barely breathe. His wide eyes darted from the altar to the door. His small hands dug into her dress, desperate to anchor himself to her warmth. The old man, de Alta, raised his trembling hands. "Stay away from the doors. Do not answer him. Do not give him names. He must not know which children are here." But it was already too late. The beast laughed. The sound was like iron dragged over stone, like bones snapping beneath weight. It rattled the very glass of the stained windows. Chains scraped against the outside wall. Claws scratched against the wood. The legend told again. One of the villagers, pale and shaking, turned to the old man. "Tell us what he wants. Tell us how to stop him." The old man's cloudy eyes burned with grief. "He cannot be stopped," he whispered. "He punishes the wicked. He takes those who lie, steal, disobey their parents, or mock the sacred. If the child is guilty, Krampus comes." Gasps spread through the chapel. Mothers clutched their children closer, whispering frantic prayers. But Elias felt something else, guilt. His small chest tightened. He thought of all the times he had lied, all the times he had refused his mother's words, the times he had stolen sweets from the market. Tears welled in his eyes as the beast's voice whispered again through the storm. "Naughty, Elias." The boy froze. Everyone turned to him. His name had been spoken. The chapel doors exploded inward with a thunderous crack. Wood splintered, iron hinges snapped, and a freezing gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing half the candles. Darkness swallowed the church as snow blew across the stone floor. And there, in the shattered doorway, stood Krampus. He filled the frame with monstrous size, taller than any man, his back hunched beneath thick black fur. Horns curled like a ram's, his eyes glowed yellow like molten metal, and his maw dripped with black saliva that hissed when it struck the snow. Chains wrapped his body, clattering with every movement, and in one clawed hand he dragged a bundle of birch rods, their tips stained dark. On his back the wicker basket groaned and shifted as muffled cries seeped from within. The villagers screamed. Some fled deeper into the chapel. Others fell to their knees in prayer. A few fathers, desperate and wild with fear, rushed forward with axes and pitchforks. Krampus swung his chains. The iron links whistled through the air and struck the men with brutal force, sending them crashing into pews. Wood splintered, bones cracked. Children wailed, mother shrieked, the beast stepped inside, hooves clattering against the stone, steaming breath filling the air with the stench of sulfur. The hunt begins. Krampus's gaze swept across the room. His eyes settled on the children first, then on Elias. His grin widened, revealing rows of jagged, uneven teeth. "Elias," the boy screamed as the beast took a step forward. His mother clutched him tighter, pressing him against her chest, whispering frantic prayers. The old man raised his staff and shouted, "Stay back, devil! This is holy ground!"
But Krampus only laughed. The sound echoed through the rafters, shaking dust from the beams. He raised his clawed hand and swiped at the nearest crucifix, tearing it from the wall and casting it onto the ground. The holy symbol shattered like brittle wood beneath his hoof. The villagers gasped in horror. Even the priest fell silent, realizing the chapel was no sanctuary tonight. From behind the beast, the wicker basket shifted violently. Small hands clawed through the gaps. Small broken voices cried, "Help us! Please! Don't let him take us!" The sight drove terror deeper into every heart. For inside the basket were children, some from their very village, others unknown, perhaps taken from towns long forgotten. Their pale faces pressed against the slats, eyes wide with terror, lips trembling with silent screams. The mothers clutched their children tighter. Fathers stood frozen, powerless. And Krampus dragged the basket further inside, its weight scraping across the stone. Elias's guilt. Elias's chest heaved, tears streamed down his cheeks as the beast's voice crawled into his mind. "You lied, you stole, you disobeyed, naughty boy." The words slithered inside his head like poison. He remembered stealing bread from the baker. He remembered lying to his mother about broken dishes. He remembered mocking the old man's stories, laughing when the villagers warned him. Naughty. Elias clutched his ears, screaming, trying to block the voice out, but it was useless. The beast knew. The storm outside howled like wolves, rattling the chapel's broken doors. The villagers huddled in darkness, their prayers drowned by the chains clattering, the hooves striking, and the cries of children trapped in the wicker prison. Krampus loomed over Elias now, lowering his monstrous face until its steaming breath washed over the boy. His claws reached out, black and curved like sickles. The old man raised his staff again, voice breaking but desperate. "If we don't act now, he will take them all." The villagers' courage flickered, but before they could move, Krampus's claw shot forward and wrapped around Elias's arm. The boy screamed as his mother fought, clawing at the beast's fur. The chains rattled, the basket groaned with captive cries, and the chapel filled with chaos. And then, with a single motion, Krampus dragged Elias towards the broken doors, into the storm beyond. The villagers screamed. His mother collapsed in despair. The old man whispered, trembling, "The storm will not end until the beast has taken what he came for." The storm swallowed Elias's screams, but the villagers who dared to follow soon learned Krampus does not walk the forest alone. The beast dragged Elias into the blizzard, his chains clattering, his hooves crunching the snow with each terrible step. The boy's cries were faint against the storm, fading as the darkness of the forest consumed him. Inside the chapel, silence reigned, for only a moment. Mothers sobbed, fathers trembled in despair. The priest stared at the broken crucifix on the ground, his faith shattered like glass. But the old man, Der Alte, slammed his staff against the floor. "We cannot let him take another child. The storm will never end if we do." His cracked voice trembled with fear, but burned with urgency. "This is not the first time Krampus has walked our village. I saw him when I was a boy. He took my brother into the forest. I followed, and I survived. I know the path." The villagers hesitated. Some whispered, "You'll get us all killed." while others clung to hope. At last, a handful of fathers, desperate and shaking, lit their lanterns and followed the old man into the storm. The woods were a labyrinth of white and black, snow smothering the ground, branches sagging heavy with frost, the sky lost behind a swirling storm. The lanterns cast sickly yellow light, their glow smothered quickly by the storm, leaving only vague halos in the night. And within that night came the sounds, chains dragging, hooves pounding, children crying, "Help! Please, let us out!" The villagers stopped, their hearts hammering. The voices came from all around them, echoing, distorted, impossible to locate. One father raised his axe, eyes wide. "They're everywhere!" The old man shook his head. "Not everywhere. In the basket, always the basket." Inside the basket, Elias's horror. Elias was no longer on the ground. He was crammed into the wicker basket, his small body pressed against others. The stench of fear and damp wool filled his nose. Hands clawed at him, small hands, trembling, desperate. Faces stared back at him from the dark, pale faces, gaunt and hollow, eyes glowing faintly as though lit from within. "Don't move," she whispered. Her lips were cracked, her skin bluish with frost. "If you move, he'll notice you. And when he notices you, you never come back." Elias's tears froze on his cheeks. He tried to scream, but the other children covered his mouth with cold fingers. "Quiet, quiet, or he'll hear." Outside, the world shook with every step of the beast. Through the cracks of the basket, Elias saw glimpses of horns and black fur, saw snow swirl in the lantern light. And then, among the children, he realized something. Not all of them were alive. Some were only shadows, mouths moving but no breath, eyes staring but empty. They were children Krampus had taken long ago, trapped between worlds, never to return. The old man led the small band deeper into the forest, following the trail of massive hoofprints and the drag marks of the basket. The storm screamed in their ears, yet the prints glowed faintly, as though burned into the snow itself. "He leaves the path for us to follow," the old man muttered. "Not because he is careless, but because he wants us to follow." The men exchanged fearful looks, but pressed on. The trees creaked under the weight of snow, their branches forming twisted shapes that looked like reaching arms. The lanterns flickered as if about to die, and each step forward felt like descending into the mouth of hell. Suddenly, one man stumbled and fell. The snow beneath him collapsed into a pit, and he screamed as iron chains shot up from the ground, wrapping his limbs. Before the others could react, the chains yanked him down into the snow, his scream cut off instantly. When they dug frantically at the ground, nothing remained, only frozen earth and the faint rattle of metal beneath. The men recoiled in horror. One dropped his lantern and ran back toward the village, vanishing into the storm. "Traps," the old man growled. "Krampus knows we follow. He toys with us." At last, they reached a clearing deep in the forest. The storm seemed to circle the space, swirling above like a living thing. And at the center stood a shrine of stone and bones, an altar blackened by fire, surrounded by skulls impaled on wooden stakes. Chains hung from the trees, clinking softly in the wind. Symbols were carved in the snow, glowing faintly red as if written in blood and fire. And there, kneeling before the altar, was Krampus. He lowered the basket onto the stones, his claws tracing symbols into the ground. The children inside whimpered, their muffled cries carrying on the wind. The beast raised his head, horns silhouetted against the storm, and bellowed a sound so deep it shook the earth. The forest seemed to bow to him. "The ritual," the old man whispered. His eyes widened with despair. "He does not just punish. Tonight he feeds." Inside the ritual, Elias's body shook violently as the basket was set down. The other children shrank back, clutching each other. Through the cracks, Elias saw the altar glowing faintly, runes burning red. He tried to close his eyes, but the whispers returned, voices not of the children, but of something older, darker. "He takes the wicked to pay the debt of this village, the debt of all mankind." Elias sobbed, begging to be let go, but the whispers only grew louder. And then the basket opened. Krampus's claw reached inside, curling around Elias's chest. The boy screamed as he was lifted into the air, chains rattling, snow swirling around him. The villagers watched in helpless terror as the beast held him over the altar. The runes blazed brighter, casting long shadows across the trees. The old man stepped forward, raising his staff. His voice cracked, but was filled with desperate rage. "No more! You will not take him!" Krampus turned, his eyes glowing, narrowing. His laughter rolled across the clearing like shattering glass and roaring fire. He lowered Elias slowly toward the altar, claws tightening. His screams echoed into the night. The storm rose higher, the shrine burned brighter, and the forest seemed to whisper one word with the beast: "Naughty." The altar was glowing red. Elias's screams were swallowed by the storm, and the villagers finally realized they had not come to fight the beast, but to offer themselves to it. The forest howled with the fury of the storm. Krampus held Elias suspended above the altar, chains wrapping around the boy's limbs, dragging him closer to the burning runes. His cries pierced the night, desperate and terrified. The old man raised his staff again, stepping between the beast and the boy. The fathers who had followed him stood frozen, their lanterns dimming, their breath short in the choking cold. "This must end tonight," the old man shouted. His voice was ragged, but it carried with the weight of memory. "I have seen this ritual before. Our village made a pact long ago when famine threatened us. They promised their children so that we would live." Gasps broke through the crowd. The priest who had trailed behind whispered in horror, "A covenant with the devil himself." The old man nodded, his eyes glistening with sorrow. "Krampus is no legend. He is the debt collector, and the debt has not yet been paid." The villagers turned. The men began to argue. One father screamed, "We must kill the beast," while another sobbed, "If we break the pact, the whole village will perish." Krampus did not wait. His laughter split the night, cruel and metallic. He dragged his claw across the altar, carving deep into the stone. Sparks burst forth, and the forest glowed red with firelight. Elias writhed, screaming. Shadows swirled around him, faces of children long taken, their mouths open in eternal cries. They whispered his name, beckoning him into the darkness. The battle began. One of the fathers hurled his axe at the beast. It struck Krampus's back, but the monster hardly flinched. With a single swing of his chains, he struck the man, shattering his body against the stones. The others attacked with desperation, knives, lanterns, even bare fists. But Krampus moved like a storm given flesh, chains whirling, horns cutting the air. Each blow he landed was final. The snow turned red. The screams were swallowed by the wind. Only the old man remained standing, his staff glowing faintly with runes carved into its wood. He raised it toward the beast, chanting words long forgotten. The forest groaned. The storm paused. For the first time, Krampus staggered. Chains loosened just enough for Elias to slip from the monster's grasp, crashing onto the altar. He coughed, trembling, his eyes darting between the beast and the old man. "Run, boy!" the old man screamed. But Elias froze. The whispers surrounded him again. "Stay, you are one of us now. The village is guilty. You must pay for them." Elias clutched his head, screaming as the voices tore through his mind. He saw visions of the starving villagers of centuries past, offering their children to Krampus in exchange for survival. They saw their hollow faces, their desperate prayers. They saw Krampus taking them again and again in endless winter. The boy realized the truth. The beast did not choose him. The village did. With a final roar, Krampus lunged for Elias. The old man thrust his staff forward, blinding light exploding from its runes. The beast shrieked, chains thrashing violently. For a moment, the villagers who remained alive saw hope, but hope was a lie. Krampus snapped the staff in two with his claw, and the old man fell to the ground, blood staining the snow. The light faded. The beast towered over Elias. His claw came down, but Elias did not scream. He looked into the monster's burning eyes and whispered, "If the debt is the village's, then take me. But know this, I curse them too. I curse every one of them who fed you." Krampus froze. His chains rattled. Then slowly he smiled. With a guttural laugh, he seized Elias and thrust him into the basket. His scream was the last sound the village ever heard of him. When dawn came, the storm was gone, the forest was silent, the altar was nothing more than blackened stone. The villagers who survived stumbled back to the village, broken, bloodied, empty. No one spoke of what happened. The pact had taken another child. The debt was paid for now. But as the years passed, every December, when the snow fell thick and the bells rang faintly in the wind, parents whispered warnings to their children. "Be good, or Krampus will come for you." And somewhere, deep in the Alps, the sound of chains dragging through the snow still echoes. And so the legend of Krampus continues, ancient, merciless, and eternal. He is not a story to frighten children. He is the shadow that waits when the fire burns low, when the snow hides the path, when December 5th arrives again. Remember this, Santa brings gifts to the good, but Krampus comes for the rest. Snow and fire. If you enjoyed this terrifying tale, subscribe to our channel to join our dark family of horror lovers. Like this video, and in the comments below, tell us which legend, myth, or cursed story you want us to bring to life in the next episode.
The storm is never truly gone. It's only waiting.